How's it going, guys? Readiness Reviews back again. I wanted to do a little update video on a firearm that I recently did an unboxing of. If you didn't see that video, or you need a little refresher, this is a 1917 SMLE No.1 Mk.3 Star from the Ishapore rifle factory in India. In 1941, it was updated to a .410 caliber chambering. So it is a smoothbore musket. The barrel is not rifled, it is smoothbore. This firearm was in the worst condition of anything that I've bought to date. I have gone through an extensive restoration and preservation process on this to try to get it to a fireable state. We'll take a look at this wood first off. So you can see it's got a nice little sheen to it now. I'll insert the unboxing video here so you can see how dull and terrible it looked. I have put probably 10 coats of boiled linseed oil on this, massaging it in. The amount of cleaning that it took to get it to this state was pretty tremendous. The rust was extreme. There was lots of dirt in every nook and cranny. I probably cleaned this one 4-stock piece over like 3 or 4 times. There's a lot of wood missing on this. So we can tell right here at the magazine well, there's a big chunk knocked out there. On the inside here, there's a piece missing where your main screw goes through. There's a chip on the wooden block that replaced the magazine from when it was a rifle. The rear part here has a crack running through it, although this has had a factory repair. There's a brass screw that goes through that, so the back end of the stock is actually fairly stable. All of the holes here are sort of walled out. Up here at the top, I'm missing another chunk of wood, and there's a pretty good crack up here on the top of the stock, but nothing that should impede the function of the rifle. The wood took a lot of work. The buttstock's actually in good shape. There's just one small cosmetic crack in the buttstock there. Other than that, it's in pretty good condition. There's all kinds of cool little markings and stuff on this. It's really quite an interesting rifle. I mean, it's a World War I era rifle, 1917. And then in the 40s, it was updated and changed to a shotgun, essentially. The history alone is really cool on this rifle. In the unboxing video, I had an issue where the buttstock was sort of rattling around and knocking back and forth. The culprit from that was this stock bolt, which is bent. So the only replacement part so far that I've had to purchase for this rifle to put it back together is a stock bolt. On the right there, you can see the bent original one. And then on the left, I have a new stock bolt, so hopefully that will allow us to fix the buttstock properly. I've went through my standard restoration process on this, which is stripping the rifle down to each individual component the best that I can. There's a couple parts in here that were so gummed up and stuck on, rusted in, that I couldn't get the screws out, like this screw on the rear sight. To the best of my ability, it has been completely stripped down to every individual component. I even had to make my own tool in order to drift this tiny little pin out for the rear sight. I used a needle and a grinder and ground it into a little punch I could use to knock that out. It's looking better than I ever thought it could. As we're going through this, I'll be inserting pictures and maybe some B-roll footage of what I went through cleaning this thing up. Just like a piece like this, like the nose cap, was pretty much orange. And now it's actually looking really nice. Now there's some pitting on this rifle. Everywhere where metal meets wood, there is pretty substantial pitting. You can see some there on the end of the nose cap. Probably the worst piece is the trigger guard. It is heavily pitted to the point to where it's probably not structurally intact to put a lot of rounds through. If any piece on this rifle needs to be replaced, it's probably this piece, but I still think it is okay for the time being. You can see how the pits have really got down in there and thinned the metal out in a couple places. It looks so much better than it did, it's not even funny. Like literally there was rust on every millimeter of the rifle. Usually when I'm going through my restoration process, my preservation process for a rifle, it involves boiling all the metal parts and then carding it with a carding wheel or steel wool. I had to go through that process twice on this rifle. And truth be told, I mean, you could probably do it a third time and still get some more rust off of it. But after my second time of carding it, I thought that it looked pretty good. And so I soaked it in diesel fuel, all the metal parts, for 4 days. And I have just pulled it out of the diesel fuel, went over it and cleaned all that off, gotten all the nooks and crannies with Q-tips. And it is looking better than I ever thought that it would. By no means is this ever going to be a beautiful firearm. It has been through it. These were stored in very bad conditions over in India for a very long time. You see there's some pretty heavy pitting on the receiver there. And down the barrel, there's not really much you can do to get rid of that, besides putting a wire wheel to it that's going to take off so much metal that it's going to change the dimensions of the barrel itself, which I don't want to do. We'll insert a picture of the cleaned bore here. It was awful. I actually had to drill the bore out with a 410 wire bore brush, and then I actually went through it with a 20 gauge bore brush as well because the 410 just wasn't taking enough out, and it was just coming out in blobs of rusty goo. The last I looked at it, it was looking a lot better. So I'm gonna get all this back together. All right, so we have our mostly reassembled rifle here. It's actually been a couple weeks since I ended the last transition part of this video. That's because as soon as I got done filming this video, I went on eBay and I found a listing for a Lee-Enfield front handguard. Now this is a new production, I'm pretty sure, repo of the original front handguard that would go on a rifle like this. Compared to the price on Lee-Enfield wood that I found pretty much everywhere else, though, this was a pretty good deal in my opinion. The problem with this piece was when it came to me, it was snapped in half. It was broken in shipping, which far too often happens with thin, long pieces of wood like this when they go through the mill. You can see that crack running through the wood there. There's a black line all down this seam right here. You can see that. On the reverse side, you can see the crack running through there and some more of it right there. I have Acroglassed that crack back together using Acroglass gel from Brownells. This is awesome stuff. I don't know how well that's gonna hold. I'm very skeptical on the strength of that actual bond. Now it sounds all right when you bang on it, but the way this wood grain is running, that was a very severe crack. All this wood is so thin, there's no way to run any reinforcing screws or anything like that through it. It's literally just the Acroglass holding that on. But it seems to be back together fairly well at this point, so I think it will hold for the purposes of this mostly display rifle. There's, of course, one glaring difference between this wood piece and the rifle itself, and that is the color. The wood on the rifle is extremely dark and has a sheen to it from all the oil that I put on it. It is impregnated with years and years of oil and stuff, giving it this very dark color. There's really no way to get that out without seriously going in and refinishing it, which I don't want to do. And then the wood of this front handguard replacement piece is a very, very blonde wood. I'm not sure what actual type of wood this is. It's certainly not walnut or anything like that. One thing for certain that I do know about it is that it does not match the wood on the rifle. So I think we're gonna have to resort to staining this. I don't think there's any stain I can add to this besides maybe some ebony stain that would get it quite as dark as this wood here is. But we're gonna do the best approximation I can. I have a big old jug here of Minwax wood finish penetrating stain. I know it's covered up by the run over stain here, but this is dark walnut. And this is the darkest stain that I have in my inventory. And I think we're gonna try to put a coat of that dark walnut on this handguard and see how that's looking. This stain hasn't been open in years. I shook it really well, so hopefully it's not too separated. I have my staining rag here, which has been used numerous times before. We'll just dip this down into our stain and get a good amount on there. That's probably more than enough. I'm not used to working with such a big jug. Well, let's rub this on the wood and see how it's looking. It definitely has that brown walnut color to it. It's a lot less black than the actual wood on the rifle itself. I'm sure this is going to require several coats to really get into the grain deep and stick. It's not going to be quite the striking contrast that it would have with the very blonde colored wood. It'll match at least a little bit better. Well, if I was trying to approximate walnut color, I'd say the stain did a great job. That's exactly what it looks like. But of course, it's still not that good of a match for the stock on the rifle. That looks decent for a first coat. The actual grain in this wood is fairly pretty. It has sort of a tiger stripe thing going on. I'll go more into depth on my wood staining process for firearms on a video in the future. I think this is going to require several coats to get it to the desired darkness. I don't ever think it's going to be a proper match for the wood on the rifle. But for the price I paid for this piece of replacement wood, I'd say it's good enough. Keep in mind, the firearm itself was only $90 shipped, so I don't really want to put a bunch of money into it, getting it back up 100%. There will still be one major piece of wood missing on this, and that's the rear handguard, the part that goes behind the rear sight. Those are very expensive for what I've been seeing recently. I'm going to keep an eye out for a repo, one of those, whatever I can find for the best price. But this piece slides into the nose cap up here in the front. The middle part of the end very simply slides into that nose cap. And you can see now that's looking quite a bit more like a regular Lee-Enfield, even though it's a little bit mismatched in color. I'm not so much worried about this rear piece at the moment. That can be replaced later if I feel like it. In the time I was waiting for that piece of wood furniture to come to me, I also managed to find a sling for the rifle. This sling feels like it has been painted this OD green color at some point in the past. However, this is still an original Enfield sling, probably from post-World War II. This sling, though, was only $5, so you really can't beat that with a stick, so might as well get a sling for it. When I busted out the Acroglass to fix that handguard, I had a little bit left over, so I thought it might be a good idea to go ahead and go over this rifle and shore up some of the spots that we talked about earlier in the video. I put quite a bit of Acroglass in the lower part of the forestock where that strengthening screw is. I Acroglassed that crack all back together. Up in the front near the muzzle, there was a pretty serious crack. You can see it there. That has been Acroglassed up. I had a crack running through the midsection of the forestock here. Went ahead and slathered some Acroglass in that as well, just to sort of strengthen everything up a little bit in hopes of shooting it one of these days. When it comes to shooting this rifle, there is a major issue though, and that is ammo availability. So I keep referring to this as a rifle, and although it did start its life as a rifle, it is no more. As stated before, it's a smoothbore musket. So it uses sort of a shotgun shell. There is surplus of this ammo out there in the market, but I haven't been able to run across any of it yet. If you have any leads on that ammo, please let me know down in the comments, because I would love to get some to actually be able to shoot the rifle. The cartridge itself is a 303 British case that has no neck in it and a round ball loaded in the top, like a musket ball. So even though these are 14 gauge, and they refer to them as 14 gauge shotguns, this does not use standard 14 gauge shells, so you can't just go out to Walmart, buy some 410 and slap it in this and it work. Now it is possible to ream the chamber out large enough to where a regular 410 shell will fit in it, and I might decide to do that in the future, but that's a money investment that the price of this rifle really doesn't justify doing that to it. I'd much rather just buy a case of the old surplus stuff and go out and put a few rounds through it and be happy. I'm going to keep putting coats of stain on this front handguard, and I'll finish the reassembly of this rifle, and I'll try to post some pictures at the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel, because I'll have more stuff like this coming in the future. Thanks again for checking it out, guys, and we will catch you in the next video. See you then. Peace.